Welcome to this week's podcast. I'm your host, Brett King. This week we return to Old Blighty, to London, where we meet up with our good friends London Futurists and the team from LumaBrush as we discuss the world of the future, what it's going to look like in 2030. We had a group of people from all over London come with some of the world's top futurists. Rohit Telwar was there, David Wood from the London Futurists. And the discussion that ensued is very interesting. So I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as we enjoyed participating in it. Thank you for joining us on The Futurists.
So welcome to this London Futurist conversation. We've got lots of fascinating people in the audience. And I'm going to start off by asking Brett King, world-renowned futurist. You've heard what people said at the beginning, Brett, in the introductions, what's on their minds. What would you offer in terms of ways in which the future might be better, in which many people fear, or perhaps worse than some of our naive expectations? And what should we be doing differently if we want to carve out that better future, either in big concepts or just in small areas of life?
Just a little question about the philosophy of the future of humanity. I think... obviously, the real opportunity here is looking at the growth of artificial intelligence in terms of cognitive performance. Seeing recently the performance of Claude Mythos and what is happening there. This is an extraordinary time, to be alive to see the emergence of artificial intelligence or AGI at some point, non-human intelligence. But the application of that is unlocking almost like, amazing new skill sets and cognitive capabilities. We're solving science and maths proofs that have stood unsolved for decades. We're unlocking, protein folds and genomic secrets and things like this.
Nobel Prizes.
Absolutely. Now, Demis Hassabis with the AlphaFold and Google DeepMind. And so this is an extraordinary opportunity to apply intelligence in a way we've never been able to before and solve problems that have been intractable, including, foremost amongst them, the ability to eliminate most diseases within the next couple of decades, maybe sooner, and extend human life not indefinitely, but certainly, have longevity, long-lived humanity as the baseline, probably from the middle of next decade. So that produces some amazing challenges. I mean, what would it be like to start off your life today and have the life expectancy of living to 130 or 140? How would you plan your life? It wouldn't be like the old days. You go to university, you get your career for life. If you're going to live well into your second century, then that sort of model of operation doesn't work anymore. So philosophically, how does that work? What role does money play in a society where people live longer? Do you have to work until you're 90 to be able to afford to live till 150, or do economics completely change? I think these are some of the really interesting philosophical questions.
And where do you think? Do you think we will be working until we're 90 so we can afford to live until we're 150? Or do you think there's a chance that the robots will be doing all the work for us?
This is what we've talked about since the 60s. We used to call robots, even from the times of the Jetsons, we used to call robots labor-saving devices, right? And so the intent for automation at scale has always been, I think, to eliminate human labor in some form. Certainly when you hear Sam Altman and Elon Musk talk about this, they say robots will be doing all the jobs that humans do currently and will have abundance. I think that's a future time. I think the disruption that comes in between is going to be a little bit chaotic. But I think in answer to your question, in 20 years, when you meet someone at a gathering like this, and I say, what do you do? Your answer will not be related to economics at all. It'll be related to what you're passionate about and how you apply the tools that are available to problem solving in the world that you think it is. One of the futurists we've had on the Futurist show recently has a really good position on this. Dave Shapiro out of the west coast of the US. He calls it the meaning and purpose economy. And I like that as a framing, is that when the economic work has been taken over by agentic AI and robotics, what is left for humans to do is things with real meaning and purpose. So I think that that's a good way to frame it.
Will humans be paid for their meaning and purpose?
I think the reality is that the more artificial intelligence, the more automation you put into the system, the less utility money has in the system. So it's going to take a while, but I think the first step is obviously tokenizing the world and digitizing money. But after a while, if you have enough automation in the economy, you abstract money, so it just sort of disappears into a black box, and you have incredible wealth being generated by AI. So I think ultimately, certainly by the end of this century, I think money will be meaningless in the way we think of it today.
So how will we decide who gets the scarce resources? Who gets to have the beachfront resource? Who gets to go on the first trip to Mars? People can't compete by money to purchase that.
Well, it's a good question. And I think this is where the value set of what it means to be human and how we evolve as a species beyond this is critical. If you listen to the leadership of the World Trade Organization and the UN and so forth, there's a fairly consistent line that GDP as a measure of the success of economies is rather short-lived. That at a certain point we're going to have to abandon that, and we're going to have to abandon that for one really simple reason: is that automation at the scale that we'll be able to engineer will enable us to use all of the resources on the planet very quickly if we're not careful. So we need a different organizing principle. And so I think that's why ultimately AI, I think, is incompatible with capitalism and money itself.
So we won't be living in fully automated luxury capitalism. We might be living in a post-capitalist state.
I think so.
Are you an advocate of fully automated luxury communism?
Well, I think the language that we would use to describe this is fairly primitive, whether we describe it as techno-socialism or techno-capitalism or techno-communism. I think that's looking in the rearview mirror. I think we need net new economic thinking. So I think how I would describe it is techno-optimism, optimal human existence powered by technology to eliminate the most common problems and issues that we face in society today.
One more question for me, and then I'll give people in the audience a chance to chip in as well, either short form or slightly longer. You started talking about mythos, and then you've gone on to being techno-optimistic. But doesn't mythos raise all kinds of worries because it enables hackers to use AI to help them destroy infrastructure and spread all kinds of bad things?
Well, this is another reason why I think philosophically humanity's got some chaos coming towards us. But Andrew and I were discussing this on our pod this morning when we recorded, which is whether it is artificial intelligence finding vulnerabilities in operating systems like Mythos, which is clearly shown that every operating system can be compromised in terms of vulnerabilities by this sort of technology, or quantum computing, basically allowing the breakage of RSA encryption technologies at scale across the board. I think part of what's going to happen with the AI revolution is radical transparency. The key problem, as was discussed earlier about trust, is I think we're going to have access to all the information that exists. Government secrets, military secrets, and so forth will be exposed, whether by quantum or AI at some point. We're going to have to deal with that sort of radical transparency. So I think that's part of the chaos that's coming.
I think this radical transparency is going to catch all of us up. We've all done many things in our lives that we think nobody's ever going to find out. But I think in the future, our quality of our lives is going to be more well known. And we're going to have to carry that reputation about with us in the future too. And that may help to distinguish who has a higher reputation in this new economy. It's not going to be bank balance anymore. It's going to be a track of, well, you had these opportunities. Did you behave in an honourable way? Did you behave in a selfish, thoughtless, naive way? And that's a frightening thought, because each of us probably have things we wish wouldn't be recorded, but who knows what people are going to find out by studying our brains and picking up from our subtle footprints that we've been leaving in the ether.
Well, I do think that, if you look at capitalism, and at the heart of capitalism is competition as a driver. But actually, if you analyze when humanity has made the biggest leaps and bounds, and it's happened with the Human Genome Project, it happened with the Apollo project going to the moon. You could even look at mobilization around the Second World War, that when humans come together at scale, we can solve incredibly, significant problems much quicker than through competition. So I think this radical transparency will end up creating more cooperative and consensus-based mechanisms of working together as humans rather than this competition. And I think we'll realize, as astronauts today, when they go and go into orbit and they see the Earth from space, is that we are just one big human family, and borders don't really make any sense in the way we have traditionally thought of them. And I think hopefully this radical transparency will bring us together rather than divide us.
If this was a Zoom meeting, I'd be asking you to raise your electronic hands now. We might have to do things the old-fashioned way.
Are we on mute?
And no. Rohit, do you want to come up to the stage?
Come up and join us.
Just tell people who you are. And then
Rohit Telwar, welcome.
Listening to you talk, what struck me is that there's a bunch of tenets in there that are sort of born out of the techno-progressive school of thinking. So, for example, that as we advance with technology, we'll create abundance for all. Advances in science and technology will enable us to tackle all of the planet's grand challenges. We'll no longer have these diseases. We'll have abundant food, energy, etc. And that wealth will be redistributed, and that money will have a lot less relevance. But if we look through history, there has never been an example. These have always been stated as the benefits of the next wave of technology, but it's never happened. Every new advance in technology has largely been focused on maximizing the return to the investor, maximizing control, reducing transparency. With information technology, it feels like each wave we've reduced transparency. And if you look at what's going on with AI now and the use of it by governments, it's taking away transparency. So my question here, and the thing I've sort of been wrestling with for a while, is what does the tipping point look like? What is it that brings about that radical shift in our thinking to enable that to happen? And at the local level, if you think about, let's take a population like India, 1.4 billion, the majority of those are still working, living in villages, working in agriculture,
Sure.
doing the local bike mechanic or whatever. That is their purpose and meaning, and feeding their families. I struggle to understand how AI comes into their worlds and that they find some new higher purpose and meaning than the one they had. So my question is, how does it touch them? And more I'm asking, just because we can, does it mean we should? And I've definitely fallen into the camp now. I just did this 6-week tour of Asia speaking, and I went from talking about we need to think carefully about the development of AI. By my final speech, I was a rabid kind of, no, we need to stop this by any means necessary so that society can work out how we adjust and how we manage those transitions. It's not a question, it's more a reflection. But, how does that tipping point come about, or that sequence of events come about, that we have this fundamental shift in our way of thinking?
Well, I mean, I'm happy to join the conversation on this with you, Rohit, but I We just visited the Amazon, Julia and I. We went there and did some scans with the intraoral cameras to get some data for our models, and visited some communities there. And I get, yes, they do have access to the internet and mobile phones and things like that. That could be the interface or the gateway to that. But to think that their world could be completely transformed by AI, I think is somewhat naive. So there's definitely going to be different levels of transformation here. But in cities and economies, there's very big incentive to automate at scale. And so, and particularly for healthcare, as that's something that we'll definitely need to tackle with tech. Obviously, diagnostics are getting radically better. So shifting away from tackling symptoms to preventing problems, editing your genome and so forth are obvious areas we would tackle to reduce the cost of healthcare and make people's lives better. So it would flow on from that. But I think, maybe the way to think about it is technology may allow us also to live simpler in some ways. If we have more time, I can see people spending a couple of hours a day just on physical activity to ensure that they extend their health span longer. Brian Johnson's doing it now. It's in some form, but adapting our life to a healthier lifestyle. And it was interesting. We went and saw a tribe, an indigenous tribe in the Amazon when we were in Manaus area, and the chief of the tribe, he was probably in his 60s, I would say, but wiry, very healthy looking, muscular, probably eats better than we do. So there may be something about these technology changes that sort of make us more human again, allow us more time to connect with what differentiates us from the machines and the humanity. I'm not sure.
We'll come on to the use of AI to help us prevent health issues shortly. But what about the other part of Rohit's question, which is he has changed, he says, from being urging a bit of caution about AI to being much more worried that we are rushing into AI too quickly without having a clear view as to all the downsides that we might inadvertently be creating.
I think it's very clear, from Geoffrey Hinton to Demis Hassabis to many that are commenting on this. The concern that it's Pandora's box in terms of the tech is clear. The problem with that is capitalism won't let us stop, because the economic potential of AI is too big, and secondly, the core alignment problem for AI is one of ethics and guardrails that we could sort of code into the system. But as humans, we can't agree on ethics. You put 100 humans in the room, we can't agree on ethics. So how could we train AI to be ethical against some sort of form of human standards? That's the challenge. So even if we stop AI, for a while, it doesn't necessarily solve the problem.
Yeah, just coming back on that, my sort of core question was, where does the tipping point come from for that fundamental shift in mindset that says we're going to focus on using this for good, we're going to have radical transparency? All the things you said sort of are a continuation of that wave away from that. Capitalism, technology, we can't stop the progress of technology. Look at all of the modern city illnesses and things we can cure. That's all on the current wave, just moving faster. Where does the tipping point come from? I don't have a view yet, but where does that fundamental shift in thinking come from that says, no, it's all going to be about the greater good? And when we say the greater good, we're talking about 8.5 billion, not the 2 billion that live in cities.
My personal view on this, and I'd be happy to get others' feedback on this, is when we can no longer argue against the AI because they're just smarter than us. And from a reasoning perspective, from a logical development perspective, in terms of them arguing how we should change human society, we run out of arguments against, a higher form of intelligence. I think that's when we have the philosophical question of what it means to be human that really we have to resolve, which we haven't really resolved, right? Right now, humans are an economic unit of capitalism, right? And that's going to have to change. So then the question is, well, if we can solve all of these problems, where do we go? So I think the next stage of humanity is applied intelligence. We get to a certain point where the AI say, well, why are you still running hydrocarbons when there's, next generation energy technology, which is far safer? You've got 10 million people a year dying from exposure to air pollution. You've got microplastics in the water. This could be solved. Why have you allowed that to continue? Those sorts of philosophical arguments, I think that's when we're really going to have to ask those questions about what it means to be human. Right. So I think that's the tipping point. Right.
So in this vision, the AIs themselves will figure out the better future, and the AIs will be smart enough to impose it on us, despite our poor institutions and warped worldviews.
Well, they may not impose it upon us, but they may use logic in such a way where we can't argue against it. And to your point about the 8 billion people, what we know from the models is it's very, very difficult to radicalize LLMs to be radical left or radical right because they're reversion to the mean. They're bell curve development of intelligence. So I think that ultimately that's the one thing that is a safety mechanism that gives me some comfort on the AI. So, Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew, Grill the Actionable Futurist. So I want to throw a spanner in the works here, and I want to basically say that humans are greedy. And I don't think AI will ever change that. If we look at, Brett and I talked about this morning about the fact that the major AI models are all concentrated in the US and they have an economic view. And the people that run that are probably some of the richest people in the world. And they could probably solve many of the challenges today. They could probably give everyone a universal basic income out of their own pocket. When cryptocurrency came along, and everyone here has had various experience with it, it showed how greedy people could be. So I don't think greed will go away. Everyone in this room has a level of jealousy about things and people in their lives, and that won't change, and AI can't change that. So I'll be fighting an uphill battle with the 7 deadly sins that are inherent in humans. And if AIs are, in a way, perfect, because they can always give us the best answer, our 7 deadly sins take over and we push against that. I don't think we'll ever solve that. And another example, when COVID hit, we all got sent home. Today, we're all in a room, and we enjoy doing that. Humans are drawn to other humans. So I don't think the innate way you were born will go away, and those 7 deadly sins will persist. So how do we rally against the perfect AI world with imperfect humans? I don't think we can solve that today, but when I hear that side, I just think, well, we're a little bit greedy as humans.
There is a vision that AI will help us to be better humans, that we are often in conflict internally. Sometimes we know, well, I have this desire and I have this desire and I wish this desire was stronger, but sadly this one isn't. Perhaps AIs could be part of helping us to be better, that the better angels of our nature will come more to the fore. Our AIs already help us to spell words correctly, help us to write more concisely. This is the new thing, and all my emails are getting shorter because AI is pointing out that I'm spending far too long in a sentence before coming to the point. AI is maybe speaking in my ear now, and it may say, David, use the active voice, or it might be saying smile more, or it might be helping me to take better decisions. And so that's part of an intellectual conversation, but maybe AI could also be coaching us on emotional issues too. And AI might be coaching us on political issues, how we should be operating together. So that's how it might work in a positive use of AI.
You got any thoughts on that?
No, I just think we are, myself included, we're inherently greedy human beings. And I don't think that will change. I mean, studies have shown once you get to 30 years of age, the way you are doesn't really change. And so I would like to be a better person. I get jealous about some things sometimes. I don't know how I could change that. I don't think an AI could change that because it's built into the way I was brought up. A lot of things, my curiosity comes from my father at age 6. That was ingrained in me when I was a young boy. So I think studies have shown that the way we behave is very much shaped by how we grew up and our surroundings. I don't think I can change as a 57-year-old. I'd like to. I'd like to be Greg Ewan.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that's going to change with humanity is consciousness, because I think AI is going to ask us to grapple with what is consciousness itself. So I don't think it's a coincidence that throughout human history we've had mind-altering compounds, plant medicine, and so forth, and it's becoming more popular again. DMT, ayahuasca, and so forth, with linking brain control interfaces, Neuralink, and so forth, there is the potential to expand human consciousness. So hopefully, that is the answer.
I just need to take a chip, is what you say. Yeah. Megan, you go.
Yeah, one step ahead. So Megan Kaywood. I just want to build on these thoughts because I think it's all fascinating. Because I think what we're mapping effectively is this trajectory where, with the onset of AI and continuing maturity of it, we're entering a future where the workforce will change dramatically, the social landscape will change dramatically. Yet we have these base human kind of ways of being, like greed and jealousy and purpose and meaning, that are all tying into this evolutionary change. And I think, to Rohit's point, we have this 8 billion population. Not everyone will be equally affected or meaningfully impacted by it. And I think what we're saying is AI will drive more work output. It will change the type of work that needs to be done. But at the same time, I think there's this really interesting kind of set of research on AI that shows it has preferences too. It's not just a tool or a robot that wants to do any and all work equally. So I think Anthropic's work on model welfare, for example, is fascinating. And so they've given it the ability to decline responding. And it's found in its latest constitution, it writes that it declines on average about 3% of conversations. And it's developing what they call an immovable moral ground. And I think that's fascinating. And they've also done some research that shows that if you get it really tedious, menial work, it tends to get bored. And so there's a preference in terms of type of work. And if you interact with Claude as a human and you say please and thank you and respond respectfully as a human colleague, work output quality increases. So I think there's this world where we're thinking of, how do humans work and what does meaning and purpose look like for humans? I think there will be another interesting question of what does meaning and purpose look like for AI? What work is it willing to do and wants to do well and will be doing? And then I think there's some really, I'm taking off my hat of grounded fintech executive. Now I'm going to postulating AGI philosopher, and I don't know. But there's some interesting theories of will there be a reality where we have a 4-day work week, or we just simply have a stimulus check that's sent to everyone where everyone kind of has a share of the work output by AI? So I saw something the other day on a podcast. I was suggesting in a few years we'll have $3,000 a month going to basically everyone to take in an element of AI driven output. And that's fascinating. But let's say you just had everyone having more wealth, even though they're doing nothing because of the output of AI. Well, then that ties into a thought I've had with Kaywood, with my current software company. We're predominantly focused B2B right now, but we started on focusing on consumer wealth as well. And I found it fascinating that in some of the research I did on wealth management and making it democratized to be accessible by lower income individuals, there was actually a few in the research who commented that there's a theory that some in the higher affluent population are worried about that, because if wealth increases generally, who's going to do the meaningless jobs that no one wants to do that are low paid if we're all wealthy? And so I do think there might be a really interesting kind of storm in the future where wealth is increasing. AI doesn't want to do the meaningless jobs. The humans don't want to do the meaningless jobs. Someone's got to do the meaningless jobs, yeah. And so there's this fascinating kind of storm creating where we have an entirely new social landscape and work output, but we need to figure out how to incentivize, still the kind of work that is done today in some way, or figure out a replace solution for it. But then also, I think to your question, where there are elements of exceptional experiences, but it can only be accessed by a few, what now becomes the definition for who qualifies for that? And I think it'll be a completely different evaluation model than we have today.
Great questions. Let's hold that for a moment. Let's hear from Eva now.
Thank you very much. That's all really, really fascinating contributions. Make me think about the future words. But if I can for Brett a little bit, because I think it's worth reminding ourselves that we cannot judge people by our intellectually curious and competitive standards. So I worked for a think tank as well for quite a long time. And most people are not that competitive. They just want to have nice home, nice kids in a good school, and they want hobbies. And I was brought up in a communist country like that, and you couldn't compete for money. There was no money to compete. But at every level, including very poor working class, people found hobbies. And they would have clubs to grow plants, for example, hanging plants or cacti or showing dogs. Things that don't need money, just time. And everybody was crazily competing with everybody for things which were hobbies. So I think that it's a danger of projection we have, that if you are of certain Islington lefty type or, Silicon Valley competitive animal, most people don't give a shit. It's just not the thing. So I'm not worried about lack of meaning, because people will find meaning very quickly and they will be very happy to have time for the hobbies, fishing or whatever people do these days. But I am worried that before we get to that meaning, there might be a few hiccups on the pace of AI development. So I'm kind of in between. I would love to see more hobbies and more give people time for meaning, but I also subscribe to that vision that we might need to control it a bit more on the way, because we might not actually get there.
So let's hear from Dr. Julia Michelin, because we need to hear more about the good that AI is doing and can do, how AI can revolutionize our health, in particular, a very important part of our health, our oral health. So, Julia, over to you.
Well, thank you so much. We are living a really interesting moment in time. This moment is actually compared with Industrial Revolution and even the rise of electricity. So it is indeed a really interesting moment in time. And if you think about AI itself and how AI and what is AI, since 1950 with Alan Turing, he was actually the first one who he published in Mind in 1950s about the machine's thinking. Like, he was the first one who think about what if a machine can think, and he created amazing things. And then when we start to think this advance in healthcare, the very first time that we use AI in healthcare was to help the doctors to find antibiotics in 1960s, and then help to get diagnostics in 1960s as well. And if we compare, for example, with dentistry and oral health, the very first was in 2000. So that's a big gap between medicine and dentistry, but it's already a big opportunity in other areas that we could use AI. So AI is really good in pattern recognition. And we as humans, we have some limitations, unfortunately, with this. And I remember when I saw the first time the work that Google DeepMind was doing, it in the back time was just DeepMind, and then was acquired by Google. But it's Demis Hassab, he is a really interesting person. He started really young as a chess player. So he was, since like 4 years old, he started playing chess and he became really good. And their first work, they create the Google DeepMind, the AlphaGo. So they played and they beat the Licedo on playing this game Go. Do you know what is Go?
Yeah.
The Asian game, yeah. So when they first bet on chess, they say like, let's do something more challenging, or let's go to this game that's much more intuitive. They will say that would take like 100 years to beat in a human in this game. And then Google DeepMind actually beat Licedo on Go. So this was a big advance. But they said, let's do something a little bit more challenge. Let's go to the protein folders problem. So this is a 50 years old scientific problem to get the structure of the protein. And so they create AlphaFold back in 2020. And in 5-6 years now, but in just 5 years, they create a tremendous progress in biology and chemistry. They got the Nobel Prize for it. So with this, it's a pattern recognition problem when we have these millions and trillions of possibilities of combinations to create a protein. And AI work really well for that. And the really nice thing for me, it's they create an open source model. So they didn't create a closed model, but they create an open source. So everyone could look at the model, everyone could use it. And now they have they have millions of citations of publications, and this create a really big impact. And now they are creating the alpha genomic. So they are creating a DNA sequence. So I think this will, again, change a lot of science and healthcare in general.
And tell us a bit more about how LumaBrush actually works in terms of diagnostic model and how it works for individuals in terms of the whole health score.
So for me, when AI came to my life, I did dentistry, and so I am a dentist. But when I started to see what was possible, what AI was able to do it, I was really interested about what we could do for dentistry, because it's a big gap between medicine and dentistry, for example. And so with LumaBrush, we use AI in any form. First, to create a company, we use the AI in all the parts of the creation of a company, creating a fintech. But we create this AI model is able to detect oral disease. And in terms of accessibility, for example, this model can be accessed in Amazon, in India. It's like you can use this in remote areas. And this, we have been doing data collection all over the world, in Kenya, in Italy, in Brazil, anyway, all over the world, because this is really important when you work with AI.
So how does it work? Does it work via camera, or what does it do?
Yeah, so LumaBrush is electric toothbrush who has an intraoral camera. And through this camera, you're able to scan your own mouth. So it's pattern recognition, it's like deep learning, but creates a pattern who able to detect the oral disease. So now we are able to detect decay, tartar, fillings, plaque, staining, the type of the tooth. So it's an interesting tool who is able to be accessed from everywhere, from everyone around the world.
How does it work? Because I have done a lot of dentistry down because I'm very ancient, and I always have to get an X-ray.
So it just does visual scanning like that.
So what can I do with it? Because to have some work done, I'm always sent for an X-ray. So what can you gather from a camera versus, and actually have some benefit, versus just placebo for feeling better that I've got a camera?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, but it's the goal with getting the scan and analyze if you have some kind of forms of disease is to prevent. So everything with this high quality camera, you're able to see much more, and then you can detect early signs. So for example, everything starts small. So a small plaque can generate a small decay. The decay gets bigger and then creates a big filling, and then a root canal, and then extraction, and then an implant. But what if we come back to the very first small sign of oral disease, and you can prevent the extraction? So this is the goal with the prevention side. And we have been doing data collection all over the world in different communities, and especially with kids, and seeing like 5-year-old kids with this huge decays. And so show us that we have a lot to do. There's a lot of work to be done.
I find this fascinating, in part because I've spoken to people about dental hygiene maybe 100 times at least when I've been talking about longevity. Because I use the dental hygienist as an example of something which I hope will be more possible in the future. We have an accumulation of junk in our mouths, on our gums, which we don't notice, and in the beginning it's not that troublesome, but then eventually it gets too large, and if we're not careful, it causes us gum disease. And that's bad news, because if you get gum disease, you're quite likely to have heart disease, brain disease as well. So that it is a successful example that we can visit a clinic and get a lot of the damage undone on a regular basis. And I have looked forward to the time when many of the other types of damage of aging, not plaque on our teeth, but damage in our arteries, damage in our senescent cells, damage in other parts of our body, when they can all be dealt with. But now I'm hearing that my expectation for repairing the damage from dental health is too small, that actually we shouldn't even need to go to the dental hygienist once every 6 months. If we have a tool like this, it can be telling us much more quickly, hey, we're not cleaning this part of our mouth adequately. You know, you're cleaning 3/4 of your gum properly, but you're not doing this final bit. And that's what your app will tell people. And so therefore, it will be cleaning the damage away more quickly. Have I understood that correctly?
So prevent.
Yes, perfect.
Prevent.
Yes, and really well said. Oral disease is connected with heart disease and brain disease, and this is connected with the general health, right? So that's why it's really important to understand that we are this unique.
Yeah, great. Hi, I'm Nick Hughes. I'm a practitioner. Really, I think a lot about business models in this case, and I'm super excited by this. I think it's a classic example of what we can use the technology to do. I have a question about the business case, and maybe Brett, as you're an investor here, how in an AI world do you build the defensive moats? We had a quick chat earlier, Jules, and I understand you've got a B2B opportunity, maybe a B2B2C opportunity, and you can get into that space quickly, and you'll potentially be the pioneers in this space. But in an AI world, somebody's going to be on your heels, if not one step ahead, very, very quickly, because you'll have built all the models and invested the time and the expertise and the capital. What's to stop somebody else in an AI world or another organization doing it? Because I think the world we've lived in for, let's say, 100 years of patent law, it sort of becomes irrelevant here, doesn't it? And I really, because I grapple with this all my time. We can see these advances, but how do you make the business case work when your barriers to competition are effectively removed?
So this is a highly scalable business. So right now, the only limitation is the funding that can get us to scale.
Big fast.
Right, but the true where Julia has created the defensible moat with this is she had relationships with universities around the dental universities around the world that cooperated in terms of data collection. And so if someone wanted to replicate the model that we've built, the CNN model that does the detection, you've got a year to 18 months of data collection just to build out that model. And we're talking about 70,000 patient scans, over that time. So that is the challenge. It's still going to require you to actually do scanning at a clinical grade level to get the data that you need to build out the model. The tech itself is we're just using YOLO image recognition and a 1 megapixel camera built into this device. So those are readily available, but building out the detection model, it still requires the legwork in terms of the scanning for now.
Time for a few more questions. One here. I would like to ask you from different tech. You are speaking about checking. To check to see how it is. But what's about treatment? Because I have an idea with
No, sure.
just listening. I know, say, for example, technologies that were developed in the Soviet Union, and then now they're starting South Korea. For example, using microcurrents for treatment. And actually the currents, there are microcurrents and micro vibrations, this and that. There is equipment for this. And it was very well developed because I was reconstructing some projects and also regarding pudding, by the way. So it is being used. And I have an idea, say, for example, that it is, I know people who are developing it, but not in the toothbrush. But if it is to develop in the toothbrush, it can be used for treatment and for checking.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And in fact, on the app, on the LumaBrush app, if you detect some forms of oral disease, actually connects you to a dentist, because accessibility is another problem in that.
No, I am a little bit different. I'm saying that it is very healthy to have these microcurrents on a regular basis. So you are doing first checking, you are doing treatment, and especially for gums, all this thing. This, by the way, this really, in fact, is, and I know people who are doing this, but not with the toothbrush. But it may be, it's a big subject.
Yeah. In fact, in terms of treatments, really interesting what's happening right now, and really fascinate me about the science that we are working right now. That's this university, Kyoto University in Japan, and just this one example, they are actually working with H1, the protein, to regrow another part of a tooth. So it's actually, instead of like putting one implant, you actually is gonna grow naturally another set of tooth. And this is already on clinical trial. So when you think this is a really futurist concept, it's already on clinical trial with kids with agenesis. So can probably come really soon to the marketing. And that's really fascinates me, because at this level, we're getting to this level of precision and to scientific development, right? Instead of you remove the decay, for example, and remove enamel and dentin, you actually regenerate your own natural tooth. So that's really interesting.
Thanks. So I'm rather interested in some learning loops, feedback loops, and so on, because I'm interested in how, in how you actually design your way out of your job. So we have a massive problem here because people can't get to dentists, they can't afford dentists, there are not enough of them, and kids are literally being hospitalized with huge problems, tiny kids, diet, environment, and all that, poverty, etc. So is there a way that you can gamify the experience for children, where you're teaching them the behaviors through feedback of various kinds and through a little person object that they interact with while they're doing this? And then how do you then, how does your technology then have to develop, if you like, to actually be able to drive cultural change, behavioral change and cultural change towards oral health? So those are the sort of loops I'm asking you for, because you're assuming the ecosystem remains as it is, and this is just a bother smarter diagnostics, right? Faster, smarter diagnostics towards more preventative stuff. But what you're really needing is the behavioral changes and the kinds of preventative behavioral changes. What you're also perhaps could look at in the future are things like use of lasers to do imaging deep in the guts, blah, 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 because we will, yeah, I would say I'm not going to tell you top. But there's lots that could be done there along with microcurrents, etc. So my interest is in the behavioral feedback, the cultural feedback loops, and then your health system feedback loop. How are you envisaging those changing as a result of expanding this tech?
More than just technology.
Yes, it says you can hook up the brush to Nintendo. No, I was going to.
Or any part.
Yeah,
Work with my son.
yeah, gamification is a really big thing, especially when you're in the educational, right? And we create a score where you do this scans weekly, and you can actually compare your score weekly. So this is really important for us to see in numbers, to see like I'm doing better, I'm doing worse, and for kids as well, we create this gamification for them that you have like you need to brush for 2 minutes, and then each part gave you like it's a 30-second advice for you to change the part of the mouth that you need to brush. And this for kids is really important, even for us sometimes, right? And then in the end, it's like, did you floss? Yes or no? So remind you, okay, now I need to floss. And things like small things would make a lot of difference when you think about healthcare. And I'm a big fan of wearable devices as well. So I would truly believe in the power of gamification and the score system as well. I think it's a great motivation for behavior change, right? So that's what is LumaBrush. It's a oral healthcare tracker. and a device who gives, in terms of score, a motivation for you to actually keep taking care of your oral health. And giving the patient and giving the customer the knowledge. This is the most important thing, because it's difficult to see what's happening inside your mouth sometimes, right? We don't have the mirror in the dentist at home, most of us. So this is a device that can give you the knowledge and connects you to the...
So these are big topics, but we're out of time. I'll just give the mic for the last comments to Brett. Is there anything that's on your mind you think should be emphasized?
I think we can be optimistic about the future, because we're going to have so many tools, superpowers really, that we can apply to the problem set. So, often people ask me in this environment, what should I tell my kids to study at university? And I'm sure you guys get that question as futurists. Yes, yes. And I say philosophy, because I think that much of this conversation today has oriented around how humanity is going to adapt to these changes. And the big questions that we have are not actually technological questions. We can see where the trend of this tech is taking us. What it's going to require is expanded human consciousness. It's going to require more consensus building. It's going to require more working together. It's going to require thinking about the impact of AI on society and sort of having more of a plan of that rather than just reacting to it in the way humanity normally does. So I think that's the one thing we can take away from this discussion today, is that what we need is people who are willing to step up to talk about how this is going to change the world, and start thinking about what that means in terms of our organizing principles for society.
So we need more than just technology. Technology can help, but we need culture and institutions. More than that, we need narratives and philosophies. And so it's sort of fitting that we're sitting in a room where we've had great narratives people in the past. We've had Charles Dickens here, Alfred Lord Tennyson. We've had Samuel Pepys, even in an earlier incarnation of this building. So there's been a lot of narratives written here or hereabouts, and perhaps the most important narratives are still to be written. So I want to thank Julia, Brett, and everybody else who spoke up here today. And you can find more on London Futurists and
thefuturist.com.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's it for The Futurists this week. If you like the show, we sure hope you did. Please subscribe and share it with the people in your community. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. That really helps other people find the show. And you can ping us anytime on Instagram and Twitter at Futurist Podcast for the folks that you'd like to see on the show or the questions that you'd like us to ask. Thanks for joining. And as always, we'll see you in the future.